It began with a simple spilled drink, but it ended with what would become one of the most shocking revelations in aviation history. On Flight 719 to Dublin, a wealthy socialite believed her platinum status gave her the right to treat a young woman like a punching bag. She screamed. She hit. She drew blood. And she was convinced the world was firmly on her side. But she had no idea who she was really attacking. She didn't know that the quiet girl sitting in Seat 27C carried a secret powerful enough to freeze the entire cabin in fear. When the truth finally came out, there was nowhere to run at 30,000 feet. Watch until the end. Karma has never hit harder. The air inside the first-class cabin of Apex Skies Airlines Flight 718 carried the smell of luxury. Expensive leather, warm lavender towels, and the clean, crisp scent of money. For Evelyn Marlowe, this was the only acceptable way to travel. She adjusted the collar of her Chanel blazer and checked her reflection in the dark window beside her. At 52, she wore her wealth like armor. She was married to a real estate tycoon, sat on the board of 3 charities, and most importantly, to her, she was a Platinum Vanguard member of Apex Skies Airlines. That little plastic card tucked inside her purse was her scepter. And this plane was her kingdom. "Excuse me," she snapped, not bothering to look up as a flight attendant walked past. "My champagne is warm. Take it back." The flight attendant, a young man named Noah with patience written into his tired smile, nodded politely. "My apologies, Mrs. Marlowe. I'll bring you a fresh glass right away." "See that you do," Evelyn muttered, returning her attention to her iPad. "Service has really gone downhill lately," she added. "They let just anyone work here now." The plane was still boarding at LAX. Passengers shuffled past the curtain that separated first class from the rest of the cabin, a messy stream of humanity moving toward the back. Evelyn hated this part. She despised having economy passengers walk through first class to reach their seats. She could feel their eyes on her, envy, judgment, curiosity. Normally, she made a point of wearing her noise-canceling headphones to block them out. But today, she had forgotten to charge them. "Move it along, please," Evelyn said loudly, not directing the comment at anyone in particular. She just wanted the line to hurry so the curtain could be closed again. Standing in the aisle, blocked by a family struggling with a stroller, was a young black woman. She looked to be in her early 20s, dressed in an oversized gray hoodie and worn-out jeans. A backpack hung from one shoulder, and she clutched a thick medical textbook against her chest. Her name was Talia, though Evelyn didn't know that, and she wouldn't have cared if she did. Talia looked exhausted. Her eyes were ringed with red, likely from lack of sleep, and she was trying to make herself as small as possible to avoid brushing against the expensive seats. "Can you believe the way people dress?" Evelyn whispered loudly to the man across the aisle. He was a businessman named Graham, too focused on typing on his laptop to answer. "It's like they let people roll out of bed and onto the plane," she continued. "Standards. People used to have standards." Talia heard her. She tightened her grip on her book and kept her head down. She wasn't looking for trouble. She just wanted to reach her seat in row 34, put on her headphones, and study. This flight mattered to her. It was the bridge between her past and the future she had fought so hard to build. The line lurched forward. Talia stepped ahead, but the passenger in front of her suddenly stopped to shove a bag into the overhead bin. She stumbled, her sneaker catching on the thick carpet as she tried to steady herself. Instinctively, she reached out, and her hand lightly brushed the sleeve of Evelyn's blazer. It was barely a touch, no more than a soft graze. But to Evelyn Marlowe, it was an attack. She recoiled as if burned, gasping as her iPad slipped into her lap. "Don't touch me!" Her scream cut through the cabin like a siren. The space went silent. Even the soft jazz boarding music faded into the background. Talia froze, her eyes wide. I'm so sorry, ma'am," she said quickly. "I tripped. I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to?" Evelyn snapped, rising from her seat. She stood over Talia, her face twisting with disgust. She brushed at her sleeve wildly, as if Talia's hand had left a stain. "Look what you did. This is cashmere. You can't just put your dirty hands on people." "It was an accident," Talia said, her voice quiet but steady. "I really am sorry." "Don't talk back to me," Evelyn hissed, stepping fully into the aisle and blocking the flow of passengers behind her. "You people are all the same. No respect for personal space. No respect for anything at all." Noah, the flight attendant, hurried over, sensing the tension rising fast. "Is there a problem here, ladies?" "Yes, there is a problem," Evelyn snapped, pointing her manicured finger directly at Talia's face. "This girl assaulted me. She grabbed me. I want her removed from this flight." Noah looked at Talia, who was already shaking her head, confusion written all over her face. "I just tripped," Talia said quietly. "I barely touched her sleeve." Noah turned back to Evelyn, wearing his practiced, calming smile. "Mrs. Marlowe, I'm sure it was an accident. The aisles are narrow. Let's just get everyone seated so we can depart on time." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. She wasn't used to being contradicted, and she certainly wasn't used to a flight attendant siding with a hoodie-wearing nobody over a Platinum Vanguard member. "Are you serious?" she scoffed. "You're just going to let her walk away? She practically attacked me." "Ma'am, please take your seat," Noah said, his tone firmer now. Evelyn huffed and smoothed down her blazer. She shot Talia a look full of venom, making the younger woman flinch. "Fine. Go to the back where you belong," she sneered. "Just stay away from me." Talia swallowed hard, nodded once at Noah in quiet thanks, and hurried past Evelyn toward the economy section. As she passed, Evelyn leaned closer and whispered low enough that only Talia could hear. "Filthy animal." Talia paused for half a second. Her jaw tightened. She drew in a slow breath, gripping her textbook until her knuckles turned white, and kept walking. She wouldn't let this woman ruin today. Today mattered too much. But Evelyn Marlowe wasn't finished. She dropped back into her seat, her heart pounding with a mix of adrenaline and anger. She felt insulted. She felt disrespected. And Evelyn Marlowe never allowed disrespect to go unanswered. As boarding finished and the heavy cabin doors closed, she ordered another drink. She sat there stewing, staring at the curtain that divided first class from economy. She wasn't going to let this go, not even close. The flight to Dublin was smooth for the first 2 hours. The seatbelt sign switched off, and the cabin lights dimmed. In economy, Talia had her tray table down. A small reading light shone over the complicated diagrams of the human brain in her textbook. She highlighted passages on neuroplasticity, quietly mouthing the Latin terms as she studied. She was exhausted, but sleep wouldn't come. What had happened in first class left a bitter feeling in her chest, a nervous energy humming under her skin. She had dealt with women like Evelyn before. People who looked at her skin, her clothes, and decided she was nothing. Normally, she could shake it off. But today, everything felt heavier. The stakes were higher. Talia reached into her backpack and pulled out a small velvet box. She opened it just a crack, glanced inside, then snapped it shut and pushed it deep into her pocket. "Focus," she whispered to herself. "Just focus." Up in first class, the mood was very different. Evelyn had already downed 3 glasses of champagne and 2 vodka tonics. The alcohol hadn't calmed her. It had sharpened her anger. She was bored, restless, and her thoughts kept circling back to the humiliation she believed she'd suffered. Her bladder finally demanded attention. The first-class restroom was occupied. The sign read, "Occupied," and she could hear the shower running inside, a luxury feature of the A280 suites. Irritated, Evelyn glanced toward the curtain. It was slightly open. She knew there was another restroom just beyond it, in economy. Technically for coach passengers, but close enough. "Why should I wait?" she muttered. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood, swaying just a little. Then she pushed through the curtain, the heavy fabric parting to reveal the cramped rows of economy seats. The air felt warmer here, stale to her senses. She spotted the restroom door. Empty, but as she moved toward it, she stopped. Row 34. Seat B, the girl, the one in the hoodie. Talia was deeply focused on her book, headphones on, unaware of Evelyn standing there. Her leg bounced lightly, a nervous habit. Evelyn stood in the aisle, staring down at the top of her head. The alcohol whispered in her mind. Say something, remind her who she is. Evelyn reached out and tapped Talia's shoulder, hard. Talia jumped, yanking off her headphones and looking up to see the woman from earlier looming over her. "Yes?" Talia asked cautiously. "You're in my way," Evelyn lied. She wasn't blocked at all. The aisle was wide enough. I'm in my seat," Talia said, confused. "Your leg," Evelyn slurred slightly. "It's bouncing. It's shaking the floor. I can feel it all the way up in first class." It was a ridiculous claim. The rumble of the jet engines drowned out anything a tapping foot could cause. "I'm sorry," Talia said, her patience thinning. "I'll stop." She put her headphones back on, clearly ending the conversation. Evelyn felt heat crawl up her neck. She dismissed me again. Evelyn reached out and ripped the headphones off Talia's head. "Hey!" Talia cried, reaching for them. "Give those back!" "I am speaking to you," Evelyn shouted. Nearby heads turned as sleepy passengers blinked awake. "You don't turn your back on your betters." "You're drunk," Talia said, her voice shaking but steady. "Please, leave me alone." "Drunk?" Evelyn laughed sharply. "I am Evelyn Marlowe. My husband owns half of downtown Seattle." She sneered. "And who are you? Some welfare case flying on points?" Her eyes dropped to the open textbook on Talia's tray. "What's this? Pretending you can understand big words?" Evelyn swiped her hand across the tray table. The heavy medical book flew to the floor with a loud thud, pages bending and crumpling. "Stop it!" Talia unbuckled her seatbelt and stood. She was shorter than Evelyn, but she didn't step back. "You need to return to your seat right now." "Make me," Evelyn sneered. Noah came running down the aisle from the galley, drawn by the noise. "Mrs. Marlowe, what is going on here?" "She threatened me," Evelyn said instantly, pointing at Talia. "She stood up and threatened me." "That's not true," Talia said, her voice cracking. "She threw my book. She came back here to harass me." Noah moved between them. "Mrs. Marlowe, you need to return to your cabin immediately. This is your final warning." Evelyn looked at Noah, then at Talia. She felt trapped. She felt the stares of the passengers burning into her. She noticed a young man in row 28 holding up his phone, recording. Something inside her snapped. "Put that away!" she screamed at him. Then she turned back to Talia. The cause of all this humiliation. "You think this is funny?" Evelyn snarled. "You think you're smart?" She lunged. It happened too fast for Noah to stop. Evelyn's hand, heavy with diamond rings, swung violently. Crack! The back of her hand struck Talia square in the face. The sound was awful. Bone against bone, metal against skin. Talia's head snapped sideways. She staggered and fell back into her seat. A wave of gasps moved through the cabin. For one moment, everything went silent. Then Talia lifted her head. Blood streamed from her nose, dripping down her chin and soaking into her gray hoodie in dark red stains. Her lip was split and already swelling. She touched her face and stared at her fingers, now coated in blood. "Oh my God!" a passenger screamed. Evelyn stood there, breathing hard. Her hand hurt. She saw the blood on Talia's face, and fear flickered briefly in her eyes. Then she crushed it. "That's what you get!" Evelyn spat, shaking with adrenaline. That's what happens when you don't listen." Talia didn't scream. She didn't fight back. She sat there holding her bleeding nose, staring at Evelyn with an expression that was no longer afraid. It was something else. Cold, unbreakable, terrifyingly calm. Noah grabbed Evelyn's arm, his grip tight as steel. "Don't move. Do not move." He keyed his radio. "Captain, we have a code red in the cabin. Passenger assaulted. 1 injured. We need restraints." "Get your hands off me!" Evelyn struggled. 2 other men rushed forward to help Noah. They seized her arms and forced her into an empty seat across the aisle. "You can't do this to me!" Evelyn screamed, kicking wildly. "Do you know who I am? I'll sue this airline. I'll have all your jobs." Talia accepted a towel from a woman behind her. She pressed it to her nose, the white cloth instantly turning red. She watched Evelyn thrashing in the stranger's grip. Her eyes were dry. She slipped her hand into her pocket and touched the velvet box again. The intercom crackled to life. The pilot's voice came through, tight and serious. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Whitaker. Please remain seated. We are preparing to divert the flight." But the plane did not divert. Not yet. Talia stood up again, swaying slightly on her feet. She lowered the blood-soaked towel from her face. "Wait," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried a strange authority that cut straight through Evelyn's screaming. Noah, the flight attendant, looked at her with pity in his eyes. "Miss, please sit down. We're bringing the first aid kit." "We're going to land." "No," Talia said calmly. She reached into her back pocket and pulled out a wallet. Flipping it open, she revealed something that was not a normal ID. Inside was a black badge with a gold emblem, the crest of the Apex Skies Airlines Board of Directors, marked with a rare symbol at its center. "I need you to use the flight deck phone," Talia said, her voice firm, stripped of every trace of the timid student she had been moments earlier. "Call the cockpit. Tell Captain Whitaker that Director Reyes is on board. Tell him to unfreeze the satellite link." Noah froze. He stared at the badge, then at Talia, the blood, the hoodie, her youth, then back to the badge. He recognized it instantly. It was a clearance level spoken of in training sessions in hushed tones, almost like a myth. "Director," Noah whispered. "Do it," Talia ordered. "And tell Mrs. Marlowe to stop screaming. She's about to learn exactly who she just hit." Evelyn went still. She stared at the badge, then at Talia. The atmosphere in the cabin shifted. This wasn't the end of the drama. It was the beginning. Noah continued staring at the badge. The golden insignia of the Apex Skies Airlines Board didn't just reflect light. It seemed to drain the air from the cabin itself. He recognized the specific crest in the center, a falcon clutching a globe, the symbol of the Global Risk and Compliance Oversight Division. This wasn't just corporate authority. This was unrestricted authority. The power to go anywhere, question anyone, ground any aircraft. The kind of badge that made captains sweat and CEOs apologize. "Director Reyes," Noah murmured, his face draining of color faster than Talia's blood-soaked towel. "Make the call, Noah," Talia said. Her voice had completely changed now. The exhaustion and hesitation were gone. In their place was a cold, steady calm, the voice of someone used to giving orders that moved markets. Across the aisle, Evelyn Marlowe, still pinned in seat 28 by 2 passengers, noticed the look on Noah's face. It frightened her more than the blood on Talia's hoodie ever could. "What is that?" Evelyn snapped, her voice wavering. "What are you showing him? A fake ID? You people are always running scams." Talia didn't even glance at her. She pressed the towel to her face with one hand and pointed toward the cockpit with the other. Noah hurried backward, nearly tripping as he reached the galley control panel. He unhooked the handset, his hands trembling badly. He entered the priority code for the flight deck. The cabin fell into total silence. Only the low hum of the air system remained. 300 people held their breath. The man in row 28 kept recording, his phone perfectly steady now, capturing every second of the power shift unfolding. "Captain Whitaker," Noah said into the phone, his voice cracking. "This is Noah in the aft galley. Sir, we have a situation." A rough voice answered, loud enough for the front rows to hear through the speaker. "Noah, I'm already diverting due to the assault. Is the passenger secured?" "Yes, sir. The passenger is secured." Noah swallowed hard and looked back at Talia, standing in the aisle, blood streaked across her chin, looking like something between a victim and an avenging angel in a gray hoodie. "But the victim, sir, the victim has identified herself. She presented credentials." "Credentials?" the captain demanded. "Is she air marshal?" "No, sir. It's board-level security clearance. The Falcon Crest. It's Director Talia Reyes." There was silence on the line. 4 long heartbeats of it. "Repeat that," Captain Whitaker said, his voice dropping lower. It was no longer the voice of a pilot in command. It was the voice of an employee realizing his highest authority was already on the plane. "Director Talia Reyes is on board, seated in 34B. She was assaulted by a first-class passenger. She is bleeding. She is ordering that the satellite link be unfrozen immediately." A heavy breath sounded through the phone, followed by rapid clicking of switches. "Understood. Link is active. Tell Director Reyes I'm stepping out of the cockpit." Noah slowly lowered the handset. He looked at Talia, his eyes filled with shock and apology. "He's coming back, ma'am." Director Talia Reyes nodded once. She lowered the towel, revealing the blood soaking into the white fabric. Then she slowly looked around the cabin. This was the moment the entire flight seemed to freeze. As Talia's eyes moved from row to row, passengers shrank into their seats. The ones who had ignored her, the ones who had watched Evelyn humiliate her earlier and said nothing. Suddenly, everyone found the floor and their shoes fascinating. It dawned on them that the girl they had written off as invisible might be the most powerful person they would ever sit near in their lives. In the tight space of the cabin, the illusion of social rank based on seat numbers collapsed instantly. Evelyn Marlowe, in seat 2A, was no longer royalty. She was a suspect, and Talia Reyes, in seat 27C, was judge, jury, and executioner. Evelyn felt the shift. The 2 men holding her arms loosened their grip slightly, not out of mercy, but out of a sudden fear of being involved at all. "What is going on?" Evelyn demanded, trying to sound commanding, but coming out shrill. "Who is she? Why is the captain coming back here?" Talia finally turned her gaze to Evelyn. There was no anger left in her eyes, only a cold, clinical focus. The look a scientist gives a disease under a microscope. "Noah," Talia said quietly, "does this aircraft carry polycarbonate flex cuffs in the emergency kit?" "Yes, Director," Noah answered immediately. "Then restrain Mrs. Marlowe properly, hands behind her back. She is now a federal detainee under Apex Skies Airline's internal security jurisdiction until we land." "A prisoner?" Evelyn shrieked. She tried to surge forward, but the 2 men, now very aware of the situation, forced her back into the seat. Harder this time. "You can't do this. I'm Platinum Vanguard. My husband is Graham Marlowe. I will buy and sell this entire airline." Talia watched her without expression. "You can't buy what you no longer have," she said calmly. "You're already bankrupt, Evelyn." Up front, the cockpit door opened. Captain Whitaker, gray at the temples with 3 decades of flight experience, stepped into the aisle. He wasn't wearing his casual flight jacket anymore. He had put on his full uniform blazer, his captain's hat tucked neatly under his arm. He walked through first class, past the empty champagne glasses, through the curtain, and into the heavy silence of economy. He stopped in front of Talia. He took in the blood, the hoodie, the young face. Then, without hesitation, he snapped a sharp salute. "Director Reyes," he said clearly. On behalf of the flight crew and Apex Skies Airlines, I offer my deepest apologies for this failure in passenger safety. I had no idea you were traveling with us today." Talia returned the salute loosely. "At ease, Captain. I was flying unlisted for a reason. I was studying for my final board exams for my doctorate in neurology, which, thanks to Mrs. Marlowe, I am now too concussed to continue." A wave of gasps moved through the cabin, not only a board-level director, but a neurologist in training. The weight of Evelyn's mistake grew heavier by the second. "What are your orders, Director?" Captain Whitaker asked, not even glancing at Evelyn. "We divert as planned," Talia replied crisply. "Nearest major hub with a Level 1 trauma center and a strong FBI field office. Seattle SeaTac will work. I want federal agents at the jet bridge, not local police." "They're already coordinating, ma'am," Whitaker said. Talia pointed her blood-stained finger at Evelyn. "Captain, authorize Noah to revoke her status immediately. Wipe her account. She is no longer Platinum Vanguard. As of this moment, she is permanently banned from Apex Skies Airlines and all partner airlines worldwide." Evelyn made a strangled sound like a wounded animal. The no-fly list. In her world, it was social execution. No Milan Fashion Week, no Vail weekends. "You can't," Evelyn sobbed, tears destroying her expensive makeup. "Graham will fix this. You don't know who you're dealing with." Talia stepped closer, leaning in so only Evelyn and the phone recording from row 28 could hear. "No, Evelyn," she whispered coldly. "You don't know who you were dealing with. You saw a hoodie and dark skin and decided I was nothing. You decided I was prey. But I'm the one who signs the checks that keep the lounge lights on for people like you. I approve the security budgets that protect you. And you just assaulted a corporate officer of a multinational corporation in international airspace." Talia straightened, her voice turning to steel. "Your husband's money can buy buildings, Mrs. Marlowe, but it can't buy your way out of a federal felony for assaulting a protected person and interfering with a flight crew." Talia turned away from Evelyn. "Put the cuffs on her, Noah, tight." The flight to Seattle became the longest 90 minutes of Evelyn Marlowe's life. Her hands were locked behind her back in flex cuffs, the hard plastic biting into her wrists. Noah had moved her to the very last row of the plane, pressed against the rear galley wall, as far from first class as physically possible. Far from the luxury she believed she deserved. The humiliation was complete. Every passenger walking to the rear restroom passed her. This time, no one looked away. They stared. They whispered. The young man from row 28 had already uploaded his video using the plane's Wi-Fi, the moment Talia authorized the satellite connection. It was viral before the wheels ever touched the runway in Washington. Headlines exploded. Skyline assault, Platinum Vanguard monster, Director Reyes attacked in row 34, trending worldwide. Talia sat quietly in her seat. Noah brought her a proper first aid kit. She cleaned the blood as best she could and packed her nose with gauze. The bleeding slowed, but the headache was brutal. She recognized the signs of a concussion immediately. She had just been studying them hours earlier. Captain Whitaker offered her a seat in first class for the rest of the flight. Talia shook her head. "I'll stay right here," she said, loud enough for the cabin to hear. "Economy is fine. It's not the seat that defines a passenger, Captain. It's their behavior." Another quiet blow to Evelyn's dignity. Talia spent the rest of the flight typing on her phone. She wasn't messaging friends. She was using the Skyline Executive Secure System to contact Darren Holt, CEO of Apex Skies Global Holdings. From M. Reyes Subject, Immediate, Flight 718 Incident. Darren, I am diverting to ORD. I was assaulted on board by Evelyn Marlowe, wife of Graham Marlowe, Marlowe Real Estate Group. Prepare a statement immediately. We control the narrative. Full transparency. Zero tolerance. Pull the Marlowe Group's corporate travel contracts. I want them on my desk before I land. She pressed send. The machinery of corporate retaliation began moving long before the landing gear deployed. When Flight 718 touched down at SeaTac, it did not taxi to a normal gate. It rolled to a remote section of the tarmac. Passengers peered through the windows to see black SUVs with flashing red and blue lights forming a perimeter around the plane. "The FBI," the captain announced over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Seattle. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Federal authorities will board shortly to remove a passenger. Afterward, we will proceed to the gate. We apologize for the delay and the distressing events of today's flight." The doors opened, letting in cold Seattle air and 4 agents in FBI windbreakers. They moved with purpose, straight to the back of the plane. Evelyn was sobbing openly now, smeared with tears and mucus. The alcohol was gone. Only fear remained. "Evelyn Marlowe," the lead agent barked. "My husband is Graham Marlowe," she cried weakly, as if the name were still a shield. "Save it for the judge," the agent replied. He hauled her up by the cuffs, rough and unceremonious, and dragged her down the aisle toward the exit. As they passed row 34, Evelyn locked eyes with Talia. Talia was scrolling through brain diagrams on her iPad, appearing uninterested. Then she looked up. "I hope the cashmere was worth it," Talia said quietly. Evelyn was marched off the aircraft, down the mobile stairs, and shoved into the back of a federal vehicle. The door slammed shut with a sound that felt permanent. Across town, Graham Marlowe sat in the Private Admirals Club lounge, sipping scotch and checking his watch, irritated by the delay. He hadn't looked at his phone in over an hour. He hated waiting. His phone buzzed. Elena, his assistant. Her voice was shaking. "Mr. Marlowe, have you seen the news?" "No, Elena. I'm waiting for Evelyn." "What happened?" "It's Mrs. Marlowe. It's everywhere. Twitter, CNN. There's a video. She hit someone on the plane." Graham sighed, rubbing his temples. Evelyn caused scenes. It happened. He'd pay someone off, send flowers, write a check. "All right. Who did she yell at this time? A flight attendant?" "No, sir. She punched a passenger, drew blood, and it's bad on video." Graham straightened. "She used slurs." Graham froze. This was different. "Get the legal team," he said quietly. "We'll release a statement blaming exhaustion," Graham said automatically. "Sir, you don't understand," Elena replied. She was crying now. The person she hit, it wasn't just some passenger. It was Talia Reyes. Graham's scotch glass slipped from his hand and shattered across the polished lounge floor. "Reyes?" he whispered. "As in the Reyes Trust? The majority shareholder of the bank underwriting 90% of my construction loans?" "Yes, sir, and she's also the airline's director of compliance." Elena hesitated, then continued. "The bank just called. They're freezing all our credit lines pending an ethics review under the morality clause." Graham stared at the amber liquid spreading across the marble tiles. His entire empire was built on borrowed money, stacked on leverage. If the Reyes Trust pulled its support, he was finished by morning. He wouldn't just be married to a criminal. He'd be ruined. Back on the aircraft, passengers were finally allowed to disembark. As they passed row 34, many slowed. "I'm so sorry that happened to you," said the woman who had given Talia the towel, gently touching her shoulder. "Thank you for how you handled it," a businessman added, his face tight with shame. "We should have stepped in." Talia nodded, exhaustion written across her face. "Just remember what you saw today," she told them quietly. "Money isn't character, and power doesn't always wear Chanel." She waited until the cabin was empty. Noah helped her lift her backpack. "Are you all right, Director?" he asked, a mix of awe and concern in his voice. Talia touched her swollen nose and winced. "I'll need surgery to reset it, and I've got a brutal headache," she said, managing a tired smile. "But I think I passed the practical exam in conflict resolution." She stepped off the plane and onto the jet bridge. She didn't go straight to the hospital. She had one more stop to make. She needed to be certain that what had started today wouldn't fade into a minor consequence, but would land as a direct blow that shattered Evelyn Marlowe's world. The holding room at SeaTac's Federal Substation looked nothing like the lounges Evelyn was used to. It was cold and bare, cinder-block walls painted a dull institutional gray. A metal table, 2 metal chairs bolted to the floor, and a mirror that everyone knew was one-way glass. Evelyn sat cuffed in one of the chairs, her hands still pinned behind her back. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by a deep chill that settled into her bones. Her Chanel blazer was wrinkled, her makeup streaked, her wrists burned where the plastic restraints bit into her skin. The door buzzed open. A man in a sharp navy suit entered, carrying a leather briefcase. Her attorney, Marcus Hale. He looked like he'd sprinted the whole way there, tie crooked, face damp with sweat. "Marcus," Evelyn gasped, relief flooding her. "Thank God. Get these off me. They treated me like an animal." "I want to press charges. That girl provoked me. It was self-defense." Marcus didn't move. He didn't sit. He set his briefcase on the table and looked at her with an expression she had never seen before. Defeat. "Evelyn, stop," he said flatly. "Just stop." She blinked at him. "Marcus, I pay you $50,000 a year. Do your job. Get the agents in here. Get me out." "I can't," he said quietly. "The FBI isn't releasing you. They're transferring you downtown to the Metropolitan Correctional Center. You're being arraigned in the morning." "Prison?" Evelyn shrieked. "That's insane. It's a misdemeanor." Marcus pulled an iPad from his case and slapped it onto the table. "A misdemeanor?" "Evelyn, look." He tapped the screen. The video played. Perfect angle. Her looming over Talia. The whispered slurs. The strike. Clear. Savage. Unprovoked. Blood on fabric. Talia's calm, controlled reaction. 4 million views in 2 hours, Marcus said quietly. But that's not the real problem. He lowered the tablet. The problem is the charge list. He began counting on his fingers. Interfering with flight crew, federal felony, up to 20 years. Assault causing serious bodily injury in U.S. aircraft jurisdiction, another 10. Then he looked her straight in the eyes. "And the worst part, Evelyn, is who you hit." "She's a nobody," Evelyn insisted, though there was little conviction left in her voice. "Just some affirmative action hire the airline picked up?" "She is the director of global compliance," Marcus hissed, leaning in close. "But more importantly, her name is Talia Reyes, as in the Reyes banking dynasty. The Reyes family trust controls the liquidity of half the construction market in Seattle," he continued quietly, "including Graham's." Evelyn's mouth dropped open. The silence in the room was deafening. "Graham called me," Marcus went on, lowering his voice. "The bank just invoked the bad boy clause in his loan agreement. Because of that video, they're calling in his debts. All of them." "What? What does that mean?" Evelyn stammered. Marcus straightened and buttoned his jacket. "It means that by tomorrow morning, Graham will most likely be filing for Chapter 11. "You didn't just break a girl's nose, Evelyn," he said flatly. "You broke your husband's empire." Evelyn stared at the wall, her thoughts spinning out of control. The reality was too big to grasp. She had always believed she was untouchable, that the world worked a certain way, that money bought immunity. She hadn't realized there was always bigger money, and always a bigger shock waiting. The door opened again. Special Agent Dawson stepped inside. "Time to go, Mrs. Marlowe. Transport is here." Evelyn stood, her legs shaking so badly she could barely walk as she was led into the hallway, handcuffed and hollow. She noticed a television mounted on the wall. It was tuned to a news channel. The headline read, "Apex Skies, Airline's Karen arrested. Victim revealed as billionaire Iris and neurology prodigy." Evelyn closed her eyes as the flashbulbs of reporters waiting outside began to pop while she was processed into the federal system. But the drama at SeaTac was far from finished. Graham Marlowe refused to leave the airport. He was a man used to fixing things. He fixed zoning boards with bribes. He fixed unions with threats. And he was determined to fix this too. He knew Talia Reyes was still in the terminal. His sources told him she was in the Skyline Executive Office suite behind the check-in counters, giving her statement. Graham stormed toward the double doors. He was a large man, imposing, red-faced, wearing a suit that cost more than most cars. He shoved past the receptionist. "I want to see her," Graham bellowed. "Where is she?" 2 security guards stepped forward, but a calm voice cut through the tension. "Let him in." Graham looked past them. Talia was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the tarmac. She had changed out of the blood-stained hoodie. Now she wore a crisp, Skyline-branded polo shirt someone had found for her. Her nose was taped and splinted, dark bruises already forming under her eyes. She looked small against the massive aircraft outside. But when she turned to face him, Graham felt a chill run down his spine. She didn't look like a student anymore. She looked immovable. Graham marched up to her, stopping a few feet away, summoning the same bluster that had ruled boardrooms for 30 years. "You're Talia Reyes," he said, his voice low. "And you're Graham Marlowe," Talia replied, steady despite the pain she was clearly in. "You're trespassing in a secure federal access zone, Mr. Marlowe. You have 3 minutes before I have you removed." "Listen, you little—" Graham stopped himself. He took a breath and switched tactics. He pulled out his checkbook. "My wife is unwell," he said carefully. "She drinks. We can handle this quietly. I know you come from money, so you don't need cash, but everyone wants something. A donation, a seat on my board, name the price. Drop the charges." Talia looked at the checkbook, then at his face. She gave a short, dry laugh. "You think this is a negotiation?" she asked. "Everything is," Graham said, some confidence returning. "The Reyes Trust is reviewing my loans. If you drop the charges and say it was a misunderstanding, I survive. If you don't, you destroy a 30-year legacy." He leaned closer. "Do you really want that on your conscience? Destroying a family over a bloody nose?" Talia walked over to the desk and picked up a thick file folder. She dropped it onto the table between them. It landed with a heavy thud. "Open it," she said. Graham frowned and reached for the folder. He flipped it open. His eyes moved across the first page, then the second. The color drained from his face. These are my internal accounting audits," Graham whispered. "From the shell company in Bermuda." He looked up, shaken. "How did you get these?" "I told you," Talia said, her eyes hard as flint. "I'm the Director of Compliance. We review every major partner that holds a corporate contract with Skyline. I've been investigating the Marlowe Group for 6 months." Graham staggered back, gripping the edge of the table. You were investigating me?" "I was," Talia said with a nod. "I was flying back from Los Angeles today to present this file to the FBI. Your wife's little outburst just sped things up. And it gave me the perfect leverage to make sure the public is watching when it all comes out." Graham stared at her in disbelief. Only now did he understand the scale of the mistake. His wife hadn't just hit a random passenger. She had attacked the one person who could destroy them completely. "The Reyes Trust isn't pulling your loans because of the video," Talia said, stepping closer, her voice dropping. "We're pulling them because you're a criminal. The video just makes sure no one will ever touch you again." Graham swallowed hard. "You can't do this," he rasped. "I know senators. I know powerful people." "I know them too," Talia replied calmly. "And they don't like being connected to men whose wives beat young black women on airplanes." "You're radioactive now, Graham," She glanced at her watch. "Your 3 minutes are up." Almost on cue, the doors behind him opened. FBI agents stepped inside. Different ones this time. "Graham Marlowe," one of them said, "we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of wire fraud and embezzlement, based on evidence provided by the Apex Skies Compliance Division." Graham looked at the agents, then back at Talia. The fight drained out of him. His shoulders slumped. He suddenly looked old. "Why didn't you say who you were?" he whispered. "Why were you sitting in economy?" Talia gently touched the bandage on her nose. "Because, Graham," she said quietly, "a real leader sits where the people sit. Maybe if you and your wife had spent less time looking down on everyone, you would have seen the cliff you were walking toward." She nodded to the agents. "Take him." Graham was cuffed and led away, passing the glass windows where he once watched his private jets take off. Now he was just another prisoner. Talia remained standing in the office. The silence returned. Exhaustion finally crashed over her. Her head pounded. She wanted nothing more than to sleep for a week. Then her phone buzzed. A YouTube notification. The video had crossed 10 million views. Comments poured in. Anger, support, calls for justice. She wasn't finished yet. There was one last thing to do. She had to speak to the world. The fallout from the Skyline incident didn't fade. It exploded. 3 days later, Talia stood behind a podium in the grand atrium of Apex Skies Airline's headquarters in Seattle. The bruises under her eyes had faded to yellow. The splint on her nose stood out starkly against her skin. Dozens of microphones crowded the podium. She wasn't wearing a hoodie this time. She wore a tailored black suit, every inch the corporate heir and future doctor. "I didn't ask for this attention," Talia began, her voice steady as it echoed through the hall and into millions of homes. "I just wanted to study for my exams. I wanted to get from point A to point B like anyone else." She paused. "But what happened on Flight 718 is a symptom of a disease we've allowed to grow for too long." She looked straight into the camera. Evelyn Marlowe looked at me and saw nothing. She saw a prop. She saw a target. She forgot that dignity is not measured by the price of your ticket or the color of your skin. She forgot that every person you pass carries a story, a struggle, and a kind of strength you may never see. Talia took a slow breath. "Today, Apex Skies Airlines is announcing a new zero-tolerance policy," she said. "But more than that, I am announcing that I will pursue charges to the fullest extent of the law. Not for revenge," she continued, "but to remind people like Evelyn and Graham Marlowe that gravity applies to everyone. No matter how high you rise, you can still fall." The trial, 6 months later, became the most watched legal case of the year. Evelyn Marlowe, the woman who once screamed about her husband's fortune, walked into court wearing a standard orange jumpsuit. Her hair, once perfectly dyed and styled every week, was now streaked with gray and pulled into a messy bun. Without her jewelry and designer jackets, she looked smaller. Ordinary. She cried when the evidence was shown. She cried again when the video of her striking Talia played over and over for the jury. But her tears changed nothing. The jury saw the cruelty. They saw the entitlement. The judge, a stern woman named Justice Pembroke, peered at Evelyn over her glasses. "Mrs. Marlowe," she said, her voice echoing through the wood-paneled courtroom, "you treated another human being as an object. You endangered the safety of an aircraft. You acted with an arrogance that is, quite frankly, astonishing. You believed your status protected you from consequences. You were wrong." The gavel struck like a gunshot. "For interference with flight crew members and assault resulting in serious bodily injury, I sentence you to 36 months in federal prison, followed by 5 years of probation." You will also pay restitution for Miss Reyes's medical expenses and emotional suffering in the amount of $200,000. Evelyn screamed as the marshals grabbed her arms. It was no longer the shriek of a queen demanding service. It was the cry of a prisoner realizing her life was over. But the reckoning didn't end there. 2 courtrooms away, Graham Marlowe faced his own collapse. The files Talia had given the FBI, the Reyes dossier, exposed a Ponzi scheme that had quietly infected Seattle's construction industry for nearly a decade. Graham, stripped of his wealth, his reputation, and his allies, accepted a plea deal. He was sentenced to 12 years for wire fraud and embezzlement. The Marlowe empire was dismantled, private jets sold at auction, mansions seized. 1 year later, a young woman sat in seat 11D on a commercial flight to Dublin. She wore a simple sweater and jeans. A thick book rested on her lap, Ad Reyes Neurosurgery Protocols. A flight attendant rolled by with the drink cart. "Can I get you anything, doctor?" she asked with a smile. Talia looked up. The scar on her nose had faded into a thin silver line, one she wore with quiet pride. "Just water, please," she said, "and an extra napkin." She gazed out the window as the plane tilted gently above the clouds. She had passed her exams. She was officially Dr. Talia Reyes. With the settlement money from the Marlowes, she had created a scholarship fund for underprivileged medical students, especially those who worked their way through school, the ones the world often overlooks. She thought of Evelyn sitting in a cell somewhere, learning too late that kindness costs nothing, but cruelty costs everything. The plane leveled out, gliding smoothly toward the horizon. Talia closed her eyes, finally at peace. She knew who she was, and now so did the world. This story is a harsh reminder that you never truly know who you're dealing with. Evelyn Marlowe thought her wealth was armor, but it turned out to be paper against real integrity. She judged a book by its cover, or in this case, a genius by her hoodie, and paid the ultimate price. It proves that in an age of cameras and accountability, karma is always watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. What would you have done in seat 34? Would you have stayed calm like Talia? Or would you have fought back sooner? Tell me in the comments below. I read everyone. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, hit the like button. It truly helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story about arrogance meeting its match. Thanks for watching, and stay humble.